One thing that had the biggest impact in my life was when I was in 6th grade and my brother tried committing suicide. It was the most depressing time of my life. I didn't know what to do. When I first found out what had happened, I was getting dropped off at my house from my friend's birthday party. I got out of the car and my mom was on the phone with 911, screaming and trying to tell them what would happen. I was so confused and didn't know what was going on, and no one would tell me. The first paramedics showed up from New York Mills and they came into the house and went up the stairs, and I kind of followed them to see what was going on. That is when I saw my brother laying motionless and not breathing on the stairs. I instantly started crying. I sat down on the bottom stairs, just bawling my eyes out. When the paramedics got my brother off the stairs and onto the floor in the entryway by the front door, that's when I didn't feel anything. I couldn't move. I just sat there. There were 2 cops and a news reporter at my house, and they wanted to talk to me and my little brother Clifford about what was going on. They sat us down on the couch in the living room and were asking us a lot of questions. At some points, I didn't even hear what they were saying. I was just staring at the floor, thinking of my brother and all the fun times we had together. When the cop was trying to talk to me and I wasn't responding to his questions, I felt like I couldn't talk. He put his hand on my shoulder and I looked at him and he asked me if I was okay. All I could say was no, I want my brother. When my older brother Jerry showed up, I ran up to him and gave him the biggest hug ever. I couldn't let him go. He was the only one I wanted to be with at the time. After the paramedics left, my dad told me and my brothers to get in the car and we were going to the hospital. We got to the Perham Memorial Hospital before my brother was taken by life flight to Innovis in Fargo. We got to the hospital, my brother Johnny and his wife were in the waiting room waiting for us to get there. Right when I walked in, I saw my brother Johnny crying, and that's when I started crying again. At that moment, I didn't know what to do but cry. My brother was on life support for about 3 days, and he started breathing on his own and started talking to and sitting up in bed. When Clifford and I got to see him for the first time since it happened, he just wanted Clifford. He didn't want anything to do with me. He didn't even look at me. He tried to talk to him. He just ignored me and talked to Clifford. He started seeing things that weren't really there because of all the medication he was on. But when the nurses would try to give him the meds to him, he would fight back so he wouldn't have to have them. He also had this little stuffed dog that he would talk to when he was by himself, and that dog was like his best friend while he was in the hospital. He would pretend to feed it, and he would tell the nurses that the dog has to go to the bathroom, so he would get up out of bed when he was able to, and he would walk it around the room. He was in the hospital for about a week and a half, and he got out and he had to go to Prairie St. John's. He was in there for help to remember stuff and get to know what had happened and why he was in the hospital and in Prairie. He didn't remember much because he had short-term memory loss at the time. When me and my family would go visit him one day and come back a couple days later, he didn't remember that we had already been there before. Knowing the fact that he didn't remember things and didn't really remember why he was in there or anything scared me. It made me sad that he was having a hard time remembering and getting through the days working with the counselors that were trying to help him. By the time he was able to come home, it had been almost a month and a half. That was when Clifford and I got to go back to school, and I was kind of scared and worried about what the other kids would say to me and what kind of questions they would ask me, like, why were you gone from school so long? Or, what happened to your brother? Everyone at school knew what had happened because the school called my parents and asked them why we were in school there. And they told them what was going on, and the next day the high school principal had a school meeting with all of our classes and told them what happened and why we were in school. For the first day back to school, I was nervous. When Clifford and I got to the school counselor and principal talked to us and told us that if anyone asked us any questions or anything, to talk to them and they would take care of it. The moment I walked into my classroom, all the kids stared at me. I almost started crying. I didn't know what to do. I walked to my seat and sat down, and one of my friends came over and started talking to me. I didn't really want to talk at the time, but it felt good to have a friend there that was willing to help me feel better. I chose to share this story because it has the biggest impact on my life, and it makes me think about my everyday choices and what the consequences will be to my actions.